Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Report, where we delve into the most amazing stories that uplift and inspire. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, and in this episode, we bring you conversations with the most thought-provoking motivational speakers and intelligent, wonderful spiritual leaders that we can find around the globe. We're here to explore the myriad ways that remarkable individuals motivate, assist, and give thought-provoking modalities and alternatives to what they do. So whether you're seeking to spark an inspiration of deep thought or you're just here attempting to gain a little more wisdom, you're in the right place. Okay, let's discover together the souls that are shaping our world. Good morning. Here we are with this very talented guest today. T. Love is how she goes by in this world. T. Love is a board certified holistic health practitioner. She's in private practice. She has something called vibrational sound therapy that we're going to find out a little bit about, reconnective healing, energy psychology, and positive psychology education and training. But most importantly, I find intriguing that this lady came up with a new therapy or something called SOJIHUGGLES or something like that. Welcome to the show. Do you go by T? Is that your proper?
Yes, that's my first name, T. And the last name is Love. I married that part, so it worked out well for me.
Excellent, excellent. So listen, tell me, what is this amazing uh, therapy that you have? This is for children, I understand.
Yeah, actually, it's an organization. SOJIHUGGLES is the name of my kids' foundation. And it is an acronym, and it stands for Sharing Our Joy Intentionally, Helping Us Grow Gratitude, Love, Empathy, and Selflessness. And I don't, I never once in my life thought, oh, someday I want to start a nonprofit. Those words never crossed my lips. The thought never entered my mind. And then it just evolved through a series of things that I had seen. And so SOJIHUGGLES is what we do for a give back to the community. And so we help children with everything from food, diapers, formula, medical care, all the way up to mental health therapy sessions, which is what right now we are mainly invested in. And we are completely run by volunteers. No one gets a salary, not me or anyone else. Every single penny goes to kids in need. So that's what SOJIHUGGLES is all about.
Well, that's extremely commendable. I mean, that's something that's needed. They say, whoever rocks the cradle rules the world. I think some military leaders said that a long time ago. I think it was Douglas MacArthur, but I could be wrong. Anyway, the point being is, yeah, go to the source, go to children. And children, I think, are bewildered. I know teenagers are with this bombardment of information, social media. What a world they live in. Totally different from the one I grew up in, but it's fascinating, and I'm sure they're evolved enough that they can handle it. But in your volunteer nonprofit, that's quite commendable that nobody is paid salaries. They're giving this out of the love of their heart. Tell me more about the therapies you do and how you help people in some of those healing modalities that I just described earlier.
Yeah, I started out probably about 25, well, probably longer than that ago, 35 years ago, with Reiki. Someone had said to me, have you ever heard of Reiki? And I said, no. And then she described it to me and I went, really? I mean, is this like I Dream a Genie? And she said, no, you have to really, you would be someone who would research it because of the type of person that you are, because I do. I research things to find out. I'm very science oriented. And so I did. And I decided, how do you find out about this energy and what courses should I take? So I went and took quantum physics because I thought there's a good start, and it worked out because the professor was very interested because I told him I'm really not here to learn quantum physics. I just want to figure out if this is going to work with what I'm doing. And he thought I was a little out there where the buses don't run, but it ended up being something that I looked at and said, this actually works. This Reiki can work, which is like hands-on healing. And there's so many different modalities. And I studied a lot of them. And then I started to do it just for fun, I guess you could say. And then my husband transferred to New Jersey, where I live now, and I couldn't get a job to save my life. I mean, I was overqualified for things. Nobody was hiring. And I thought, oh, what am I going to do? So I started doing Reiki. And then after about 10 years, it turned into something different. I wasn't quite sure what it was. And I was on a podcast. I had a podcast for 15 years, and I was interviewing Dr. Eric Pearl, and he is the person who devised Reconnective Healing. And we were talking, it was a pre-recorded show on a Thursday, and we were talking. And as soon as I got off air, I thought, I really should go take his class. And when he told me, yeah, there's one coming up in November in England, or yeah, over Thanksgiving. And I said, no, I can't do that. And then there was one in New Zealand or something over Christmas, and I can't do that. And then he told me there was one that weekend. And so I said, all right, maybe I can do that. And I said, I can't. I've got too many things going on this weekend. And he said, yes. So when I got off air and I checked my email and I checked all my voicemails, every single thing I had been canceled. Everything. For
Wow.
the whole hour I was on the phone with him, it had all been canceled. And I thought, okay, this is a sign. I should probably go. So I called the airline, and they had one seat left on one of those planes where I swear they wind the rubber band and throw it in the air. I hate those planes, but I said, okay. I got on the plane. I called the hotel. They said they didn't have any rooms in his grouping. And I said, all right, that's fine. What do you have outside the grouping? And they told me, and she said, this was in Toronto, and she said, it's $10 less. And I said, well, I would have wanted that anyway. So, okay, there we go. And then I
Sounds like
got
things
there and
were falling
realized,
right in place. Tick
oh
tack
yeah, it
toe.
was crazy, right? It's crazy when that happens. And that's when you know you're doing the right thing. So if you're following your intuition and you're following what's coming up and aware of it, you're going in the right direction. So I get up there and I realize I haven't told anyone I'm coming. I hope I can get into this class.
Holy moly.
Oh yeah, and I did. I got into the class, which, of course I was going to, and then I came home. And as soon as I started taking what I learned there and using it on patients during the week, the first person came in and said, okay, what's different? And I thought, okay, that's one person. But every person had something to say, because I knew the Reiki, the symbols and everything. You don't need somebody to attune you to be able to do this. You just have to have the faith and the intention and give it to the person, and really intend over that person, and it will happen. To me, all of these things are different forms of prayer, and prayer is energy therapy. There's so many different modalities, because if you believe in whoever the God is of your understanding, that they will help you. And if you thank first, because the moment I put my hands over someone, I thank for them being healed. And I've seen a lot of what I'll call miracles happen, because I don't expect them. I just know they'll be healed. And when people call me back hours later telling me my neuropathy isn't back, or a woman who came in with shingles and 3 days later it was gone, her shingles were gone. And people say, oh, you're a great healer. And I tell them, no, nobody heals anybody. I am like PVC piping. I am a conduit for universal life force energy. I intend and have faith. It's nothing more than prayer. That's why when people are in the hospital and everybody's praying, people will have, spontaneous recovery because of prayer. They believe. So to me, it's a very spiritual practice, even though it's medicine, because doctors will call me and say, I don't know what you do, but can you help my patient? And I'll say, I don't know, send them over. Yeah, I don't know. They want to know what the protocol is. And there is no protocol per se, because everybody presents differently, because during the day, energy is presented to us differently. We have different things going on. So the protocol is always different. And I
Hmm.
also incorporate into that work vibrational sound therapy, because sound is it's so healing. And depending on the frequencies that you use, and I use quartz crystal singing bowls, and they're pure and they're beautiful, and they make this noise that people they love. And it really brings them into a place where they can heal. So it calms them right down. It brings them into a healing space. And that helps with the energy, the hands-on energy. So it goes from hands-on energy to the vibrational sound therapy, and then back to the hands-on energy to ground them. And then they're all set.
So it sounds like somebody comes over to see you. They're in
Yes.
distress, pain, confusion, maybe depressed to the point of maybe wanting to leave at their own hand or something, to some extreme situation. And it's interesting that you use the word conduit. I've interviewed many people over my lifetime and have consulted and talked to and explored similar, let's call it areas of interest. And the one word that seems to pop up all the time is conduit. The credible people who perform spiritual healing, Reiki, for instance, or by other names, they all have this idea that God comes from God Almighty, comes from the universe, comes from some source, and it goes through them.
Mhm.
And I think in the good book, it talks about the vessel being filled up with wine, and you pour the wine out to accommodate your guest, but there's a little wine that sticks inside the vessel. And a man I know, Reverend Alec Holmes from Cairo, Michigan, who I have great respect for, once said, that's what happens when you are a practitioner of spiritual healing, laying on of hands, Reiki, whatever, virtue healing. Some of that energy sticks, and it kind of has a benefit to you. Have you ever found that happening to yourself, where you've been feeling a little plunk one day and next day or after a session you're perked up again?
Sure. I explain to people, I'm not using my energy. You don't want me to. You don't want my energy. So I actually picture like a piece of PVC piping, just that's what I am. But when you work all day long and you're working on like 6, 7, 8 people a day and you're playing the bowls and you're doing this work, you can't help but be energized by it. That's not to say, and people will say, well, you should never get sick. Well, that's not true either. Things can happen and they will happen, but I do work on myself and I give myself sessions when I am able or find the need.
Of
But I
course.
truly believe it comes from a greater source that I'm thanking and a greater source that is honoring. I'm honored to be able to be part of this, to be able to be a conduit for healing.
And of course, you have the evidence that people report back to you.
Yes.
Hey, what happened? I'm feeling better. What kind of magic did you work on me? Ha ha ha. And you go like, no magic. It was divine energy or whatever, however you described it just now. Those are my words, not yours, of course. But the point being is that you're describing it very well. And for people who may not be aware of Reiki, or they want to learn what you're doing, can they come and see you and take lessons from you and things like that?
At one point I did teach, but I tell them exactly what Dr. Eric Pearl told them. He wrote a book called The Reconnection. And when you went to his dissertation on the Friday night before it all started, he said, all you have to do is read the book 3 times. You really don't
Mhm.
need to be here. And I thought, wow, that's commendable. And I had read the book 3 times because, you read a book and you get something out of it. And then you go back and read it again. And there are words in there that I didn't see before. I don't remember this part. And I know there aren't any little gnomes coming in and rewriting the book at night. So each time you read it, you get something else. And just with that, I did teach, but I realized when you're teaching Reiki and you attune someone, you're blowing in their face. And I'm like, what gives me the right to blow in somebody's face and tell them they can now do this? All they have to do is have the faith and the intention. And maybe that's their life purpose. And if they're just sitting looking at a picture of Mikhail Yusui online and $500 later at the end of the weekend, they're a master Reiki person, they're not. They're not. So it's got to be part of your purpose and doing it genuinely in a way that is coming from your heart. And that's huge with me. We should come from our heart. When you come from your heart, it's for the entire world. It's for the whole collective of which we are a part. If you're not coming from your heart, then it's usually ego. And that's not for you, good for you or anyone else. So you might as well just come from your heart and make it good for everyone.
Okay. Hold that thought. We're going to take a short break for messages. We'll be right back.